The federal government is promising help for frustrated airline passengers. Transport Minister Omar Alghabra says Ottawa will close a loophole that allows airlines to deny customers compensation for cancelled flights when it tables an overhaul of passenger rights legislation in Parliament this spring. Alghabra is also promising the government will spend $76 million to hire new staff to reduce the backlog of 42,000 complaints filed with the Canadian Transportation Agency.
We are working on strengthening and clarifying the rules to ensure that we make a distinction. Obviously, we don't want planes to fly when it's unsafe to do so, but there are certain things that are within the control of the airlines, and we need to have clearer rules that that puts the responsibility on the airlines when it's their responsibility. So yes, and as I promised Canadians, we are going to be tabling these new rules this spring.
Well, for reaction to this announcement, let's go live to CP24's Christina Tinalia. Christina.
Yeah, it's been no surprise to anyone, Jamie. The last few years, we've been live here chatting with travelers who are frustrated with canceled flights, delayed flights, lost luggage. So you would anticipate that this announcement from the Transport Minister today is welcome news. Let's find out what some think about this, including one expert we chat with frequently, Gabor Lucas, who is an air passenger rights advocate. Gabor, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good afternoon.
Gabor, are you satisfied with this announcement from what you've heard so far?
No, I'm quite disappointed by it. On the one hand, the minister has been wishy-washy and vague as to whether he's actually going to close the safety reasons loophole. It sounded like he was saying yes, but then backpedaled on it. And more importantly, just throwing more money at the Canadian Transportation Agency without addressing the root cause of the problem, which is the problem with the whole vagueness and complexity of the regime, the passenger protection regime in Canada, is just like a smokescreen. The Canadian Transportation Agency has shown to be lacking impartiality, lacking independence in dealing with passenger rights matters. They have been more acting as the airlines' advocates in those matters, especially during the pandemic. So when I'm hearing $76 million given to the agency, my first thought was throwing pearls before swine.
Throwing money at the problem is what you're saying is not going to work. The $76 million is in part to hire more staff, 200 extra staff to deal with 42,000 outstanding complaints. And you touched on, something that airlines often cite is that they've had to cancel or delay a flight due to safety issues, and that's considered a loophole because then they don't have to compensate travelers, is what happens here. So on that note, when we consider and take a look at that perspective, that the minister says he is going to be taking care of that loophole, do you have any confidence in that?
I expect he is going to perhaps deal with some aspect of it, especially the claims of crew shortage. But unfortunately, what Canada would need, and the minister does not sound like willing to do, is harmonization with the European Union gold standards, where it is clear that any kind of safety issue with the aircraft, short of sabotage and active terrorism and grounding of all particular aircraft models, is within the airline's responsibility and compensation is owed. So when the minister is talking about, we don't want airlines to fly with unsafe planes, it sounds like he's maintaining the loophole. He's just maybe trying to make the loophole slightly smaller. The question that Canadians need to ask themselves is, how did we come to the point where we have 42,000 complaints when we just had around 30,000, 32,000 a couple of months ago? The number of complaints keep rising because the rules are so complex, so ambiguous, and are not being enforced. Just by having more people look at extremely complex rules is going to be very wasteful. What we would need to achieve is a far simpler set of rules, like what they have in the European Union, where it takes just a couple of minutes to ascertain whether compensation is owed. And then perhaps we would not need 200 more people to ascertain and deal with a backlog.
I have one more question, if I can, really quickly here. You mentioned the Canadian Transportation Agency that is lacking independence, and that's its role. It's supposed to be an independent, quasi-judicial agency that deals with passenger rights. What would strengthen this agency? You're saying, giving $76 million to deal with these complaints and to hire more people doesn't solve the issue that this is not, in your opinion, an impartial agency.
Well, I would like to see the Canadian Transportation Agency dismantled because it has been such an intertwined relationship, incestuous relationship with the airlines and Transport Canada that it can hardly be reconstructed without some fundamental change. Some of the functions should go to one office. Perhaps industry regulation should be one aspect, consumer protection a different aspect, adjudication a third aspect. Maybe just 3 different bodies could be a potential solution, but it cannot be just a cosmetic surgery. It has to be major dismantling of the current body and creating something entirely new.
Okay, Gabor Lucas, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and perspective always.
Thank you very much for having me.